Hello, everyone. Today we will be discussing the topic of mixed conditionals. And as you can see right in front of you, you have a sentence which is an example of a mixed conditional sentence. It says, if I had studied more grammar, I would, and you can think of a completion of a sentence. If I had studied more grammar, I would be able to understand mixed conditionals probably, and we will be able to understand this by the end of the lesson, inshallah. So in order to understand mixed conditionals, we need to go through the different types of conditionals. We have 4 types, let's say, and the 5th one is going to be a mixture of the second and the third. I don't really need, as a student, to be able to name the different types, but it's important for me to understand the meaning of each one. A conditional is usually a sentence that includes the word if. In Arabic, we can call them جمل شرطية. Usually you'd have like a cause and a result in these sentences. So let's start with the first, which is the zero conditional. I would say we call it zero conditional because we don't have a possibility here and we're not using a modal verb. So we talk about things that are always true, like scientific facts. For example, if I say, if you freeze water, it turns into ice. I'm using here the zero conditional, which means I'm not using a modal verb. I did not say it will turn into ice. If you freeze water, it turns into ice. It means all the time. This is true. It always happens. What is the structure here? In the first part of the sentence with if, I have present simple, okay, freeze. And in the next part, okay, I also have present simple. So in both sides, I have present simple tense and no modal verb. I do not say it will turn. I do not say it may turn. It turns always. This is always true. Sometimes I use sentences that are not scientific facts, like the next one. I get tired if I work too much. What does this mean? It means every time I work too hard, I get tired. This is always true about me. So what is the difference between this and saying something like, if I work too much, I will get tired? The difference is that in this sentence, I'm trying to give you the message that this is always true about me. And the next one, it's again a scientific fact. If you heat water at 100 degrees, it boils, not it will boil. Of course, it's also correct to say it will boil, but here I'm trying to give you the message that it's a scientific fact and it's always true. The last one is a very good example too. If I say something like, if students miss an exam, the professor fails them. Instead of saying the professor will fail them, if I say will fail them, I'm trying to show you that there is a possibility here. It's still a strong possibility because I'm using will and not may, okay? But there is still possibility if I use will. But if I don't use will, like this one, I'm trying to give you the message that it's a fixed rule, nobody can change that, and it's always true. You miss your exam, you failed. End of story. So this is the zero conditional. Okay, remember, present simple, present simple. The next one is the first conditional. What do we have here? We are always, we talk about possibilities in the present or in the future. Now we have a possibility to talk about, and that's why we usually tend to use a modal verb like will or can or may. So if I say something like, if it rains, I will stay at home. There is the possibility that I will stay at home. This one is still easy because what we have here is that we have in the first part with if, we have present simple tense. And in the next one, we usually have will or won't, like will not. And we'll have the verb in the bare form, stay, I will stay. And let's look at the second example. If you study hard, you will pass your exams. It's a possibility in the present or in the future. If you study hard, present simple, and in the next part, will plus a verb. Okay, you will pass your exams. If I wake up late, I will miss the bus. There is a possibility that you will miss the bus if you wake up late. Okay, so far we don't have any problems. Things are supposed to be easy, inshallah. Starting from the second, if you understand this, things will be completely easy for you to understand the mixed conditionals, because usually the mixed conditionals are sentences that mix between the second and the third conditionals. So The second conditional sentence is usually a sentence talking about imaginary situations in the present or in the future. So if I say something like this, if I won $1 million, I would buy a new car. What does this mean? It means that I do not have $1 million now. Why? Because this is imaginary. It's not even possible. I am assuming something which is not true, but we have to be careful to think that this is in the present. I'm talking about something I am hoping for, or I'm trying to imagine a situation in the present. If I won $1 million, I would buy a new car. Okay? I would buy a new car also. What does this mean? The reality, the real situation here is that, of course, I will not buy a new car. Why? Because I simply do not have $1 million, you see? Okay? What is the structure here? This is the tricky part. So in the first part, or the sentence that has if, okay, we usually use the verb in the past simple tense. And this is the tricky part. You can see that there's a verb in the past, but you have to think of the meaning as present. Be careful with this. If I won, not if I win, okay? Why? Because I'm talking about an imaginary situation in the present. And the next part usually is would plus a verb in the infinitive form. So I would buy, okay? Let's look at the second one. If I were you, I would quit smoking. What does this mean? It means that the reality is, of course, I am not you. And the next part is I would quit smoking, okay? What does it mean? It means that if I were you, which is not true, of course I can never be you, I would quit smoking. And this means I will not quit smoking simply because I am not you. What does this mean in Arabic? لو أنا مكانك كنت سأتوقف عن التدخين. But the trick here that you have to understand that this is in the present. I'm talking about the present. You can actually see a verb in the past, right? But what you want to say or what you want to talk about is an imaginary situation in the present, right? Let's look at the last one. If I had more time, I would travel to many countries. لو عندي وقت فراغ كنت سأسافر لدول عديدة. What does this mean? What is the reality? Of course, I'm assuming or imagining the whole situation, but the reality is, or the real situation is, that actually I do not have free time. This is the truth. And I'm trying to show you that this is imaginary by using a verb in the past simple tense, which is had. And in the next part, what does this mean? The reality or the real situation means that I will not travel to many countries because I do not have free time. But if I had free time, I would travel to many countries. So the second conditional is a sentence that talks about imaginary situations in the present or in the future. Now we can move to the next one, okay, which is the third one. Usually the second conditional, and usually you will have sentences about wishes, you know. You're hoping for something, so you would try to use a sentence in this case in order to show that you're hoping for something. However, the third one is a little different. It's still imaginary. We're talking about an imaginary situation, but the meaning is in the past. So here I'm talking about something I probably regret doing, or I probably regret even not doing. So if we say something like, if I had a gold medal, I would have been happy. What does this mean? It means that probably last year or at some point in the past, I had a chance to win a gold medal. But what happened in the past is that I did not actually get the gold medal. And I was not happy in the past. You can see here that both situations are in the past and they are imaginary. Why? Because this whole situation did not happen. What does it mean? It means that actually I did not get a gold medal. I didn't. The truth is I didn't. I actually hope that it happened, but it did not. So somehow I'm showing like, kind of like, I'm regretting this. I would have been happy means that, because this is imaginary and it's in the past, this simply means that I was not happy in the past. Why? Because I did not get the gold medal. Okay, another example is this. If I had met Susan last week, I would have given her the book. What does this mean? It simply means that I did not meet Susan. And of course, I did not give her the book because I simply did not meet her. You see, if I want to translate this in Arabic, it would sound like لو كنت قابلت سوزان الأسبوع الماضي كنت أعطيتها الكتاب. But this did not happen. The easy thing here is that both situations are in the past. I don't have any mixtures. So both situations, the cause and the result are both in the past, okay? What I need to understand also here is that how do I structure this? So here, if you want to show that you're talking about an imaginary situation in the past using if, what you do is use had plus past participle, okay? And in the next part, you would see would have past participle, okay? Would have past participle. In this way, you would understand both situations are in the past. The last sentence, the last example here, if the weather had been good, this is certainly in the past because from the structure I can tell had plus past participle, okay? And the situation, like it makes sense that it was in the past. We would have gone water skiing. What does this mean? Of course, that the weather was not good because I'm talking about imaginary, an imaginary situation. So usually the truth is the opposite of the sentence that I have with if. So we would have got water skiing. So did we go water skiing? Of course we did not. Okay. Fine. So this type of conditional, the third conditional, is talking about an imaginary situation in the past, usually for regrets or things that happened or did not happen in the past. How do I show this? I usually like go one step further in the past in order to show this. So again, the second conditional, okay, if we go to the previous slide, the second conditional is usually about an imaginary situation in the present. In order to show that it's imaginary, you need to use a verb in the past simple, like this one. Instead of saying when, you would say one. Instead of saying am, you would say were. And one thing I forgot to mention here, that usually I can use were here, although it is usually suitable to say if I was you. But normally people would use were in order to show that this is an imaginary situation. And the third conditional is also imaginary, but it's in the past. Okay, now after understanding this, it should be no problem at all to understand the mixed conditionals because it's usually a mixture between the second and the third. And we will show you now examples of this. But before we go to the next part, which is the mixed conditionals, which is the main topic of our lesson, I need to show you or give you a hint about the use of the verb have. You need to be careful when using the verb have, because sometimes it's a helping verb and sometimes it's a main verb, and this sometimes causes many problems to people when they are answering sentences. So let me show you the difference. If I look at this sentence, if I had had more time yesterday, I would have called you. And another example is this. If I had studied more, I would have passed. What do you notice here is that had is followed by another verb. So the first one is a helping verb. What does this mean? It means I'm using this verb in order to form a certain tense, which is the past perfect. So the first had is this have, but it's a helping verb. I'm using it in the past, and I'm using another verb after it in order to show that this is a past tense. I'm using it to help me form the past perfect tense. Some people would find it confusing, or sometimes they feel like they are not comfortable using had, although it's fine to use had. What does this mean? It means if I had owned, if I had got, for example, more time yesterday. The first one is auxiliary or helping. The second one is the main verb, which is just a verb giving me the main meaning of the sentence. So I can replace it with another verb if it's possible. I can use something like I had got, I had owned, whatever, right? And the next example will show you this more. So for example, if I had studied more, the first had here is the auxiliary or the helping verb. It's followed by another main verb, which is studied, right? So this means if I see it in this way, I would understand this is past perfect, okay? Because the first one is the helping verb and it's followed by another verb. If you look at have, sometimes it's a main verb and you have to be very careful with this. For example, if I say, if I had more time, now I don't have another verb after that. So what does this mean? This means that this is the main verb, right? And I'm using it to show a second conditional here because I'm using a past simple, not past perfect tense. Another example is this. If I had a bigger family, I would be much happier. So as I said, these two here are main verbs. They are giving me the main meaning of the sentence, okay? They are not followed by other verbs, so I have to be careful when I see it in this way. These two, okay? These two sentences simply mean that I'm showing you an example of a second mixed conditional, which means I am talking about the present. You can see a verb in the past simple, so this means I'm talking about the present. But the first ones here, had followed by another verb, means I'm talking about the past perfect tense, which means I am using a third conditional case here, which is showing me that the meaning is in the past, okay? One more thing is about inversions, because I've seen this in some of the final exams, okay? You have to be familiar with things like these. For example, this is a conditional. Should you have any questions, contact me. What does this mean? It simply means if you have any questions, contact me. So this is one form of inversion. Inversion means like sometimes we need to like change the order of the words in the sentence, okay? But the meaning will be still the same. So in this case, these two sentences are similar in meaning. Just be familiar with how this looks like. This is an example of a first conditional. Let's look at another one. This one is a second conditional. We're talking about a possibility, or sorry, an imaginary situation in the present. Where are you? I would quit smoking. What does this mean? It simply means if I were you, I would quit smoking. What do you notice here? In the first one, we are not using if, because when we use this type of inversion, there is no need to use if here, okay? But they both mean the same thing. Another type, which is more common, and I'm sure I saw this, I guess, in I think in last year's exam, I guess. Had I known this, I would have acted differently. What does this mean? I don't see if here because I'm writing it differently, but it actually means the same thing as this one. If I had known this, I would have acted differently. Okay, so be familiar with this. If you see this one, it's still an if sentence, and it's an example of a third conditional here because I have had and there is another verb. Okay. And in the other part, I have would have acted differently. Okay, so let's go to the next part, which is the main thing here. How do I form a mixed conditional? Usually I can mix between the second and the third. Sometimes, okay, you have a present result of a past condition. How? Let's look at this one. If I had listened to your advice, I wouldn't be in the mess. Normally, people after studying all the previous conditionals, they would say, Miss, it should be, if I had listened to your advice, I wouldn't have been in the mess. That's okay, it's possible, but you need to understand. How about the first one? Are we talking about the past or the present? Always ask yourself, are we talking about the past or the present? If you see had followed by another verb in the past participle like this one, this means I'm talking about the past, right? So what does it mean? It means I did not listen to your advice in the past. Probably yesterday, probably last week, anytime in the past. The next one, I don't have. I did not say wouldn't have been in the mess. So what does this say? This is telling me that this is in the present. If I use would plus a verb in the infinitive, I'm not using have as an auxiliary. So this means I'm talking about the present. So this simply means I am in the mess right now. So this means this is in the present. What does this sentence mean? Let's imagine there is this situation. For example, I have a student whose mother advised to study. Please study. You have an exam tomorrow. Make sure you study hard. But she doesn't listen. So what happens is, okay, the next day she goes to the exam and she starts answering the questions, but she can't because the day before she did not listen to the advice of her mother. So this is a perfect situation when this student can say, if I had listened to your advice, I did not listen to your advice yesterday, and now the result, I am having this problem. I cannot answer any of the questions when right now. I did something in the past. I'm suffering from the result right now. Okay? يا ليتني لو كنت سمعت نصيحة ما كان زماني عندي المشكلة الحين. Okay? The next one, if he had checked the map, always ask yourself, am I talking about the past or the present? If you see had plus past participle, past, correct. So what did this mean? It means he did not check the map. He did not in the past. The next part, he wouldn't be lost. What did this mean? It means he is lost now because I did not say wouldn't have been lost. So this means I'm talking about the present. In the past, he did not check the present, okay? And now he is having a problem because now he is lost, present. So I'm mixing between the past and the present. Last one, if I had gone to university, I would be a doctor now. What does this mean? It simply means that I did not go to university in the past. I'm talking about the past now. The other part means if I'm saying I would be a doctor, what does it mean? It means I'm not a doctor now. لو كنت رحت الجامعة in the past, I would be a doctor now. كان زماني دكتورة. So what does it mean? It means I didn't go to university and I'm not a doctor now. I'm probably something else. Fine? Okay. There is also a possibility to start with the second conditional and end with the third conditional in this way. Sometimes the situation is like we have a past result of a present or a continuing condition. Like, for example, if I say, if I were a good cook, you have to ask yourself again, am I talking about the present or the past? If I were a good cook, or if I was, it's also possible. So what does it mean? This is past simple. So it simply means I'm talking about the present. What does it mean? It means that I am not a good cook. Normally, I'm not a good cook. And then the other parts, you can see here that I have would have past participle, would have invited them to dinner. If I were a good cook, I would have invited them to dinner, which means I did not invite them to dinner. So if I were a good cook, لو أنا بعرف أطبخ كان عزمتهم على العشاء. But both parts are not true, right? But one of them is in the present, like I'm always not a good cook, and the other one is in the past, which is a specific situation in the past. I did not invite them to dinner because of that. The last one, if you weren't such a poor dancer, what does this mean? It means that you are a poor dancer, actually, right? So usually the real situation is the opposite of the sentence with if, okay? So here I can say you weren't, and with if, without if, it's going to be the opposite. Actually, you are a poor dancer. You would have got a job in the chorus line in that musical, right? So what does this mean? Did you get the job? Actually, no, you did not get the job, okay? So this is how we can form mixed conditionals, usually we mix the second with the third. We mix sentences from the present with sentences from the past. It always depends on the situation, and usually you would have some keywords that would tell you this is it. These are my references. Make sure that you watch the next video, which is going to be including some practice questions. I'm sure it will explain things more to you. Thank you so much for watching, and be careful to watch the next one, inshallah. Thank you so much.